Hello, my name is Christian Longchamp. I work as a dramaturg with different stage directors, above all with Barrie Kosky and Romeo Castellucci, for different opera houses in Europe as an artistic advisor, and am the artistic director of the Festival Asmondo in Strasbourg, France. Welcome on OperaVision. We are happy to offer you this new podcast, which will allow you to hear the director Barrie Kosky talking about one of his most powerful productions, which you can watch for free on the OperaVision platform from the 12th of June to September 11, 2020. As an introduction to the video recording of this staging of Moses und Aron by Arnold Schönberg, I'm pleased to present this interview during which Barrie Kosky will allow you to understand all the dimensions of this production, which got an enthusiastic public and critical success at the time of its creation in 2015. As you may know, Barrie Kosky is one of the most remarkable directors of our time. His productions are visible on the most prestigious European stages, but apparently it hasn't been enough for him to stage operas. For 7 years, he has also been the hugely successful director, the intendant of the Komische Oper Berlin. He has made this opera house, recreated by Walter Felsenstein after the Second World War, an extraordinary place for new creation, where there is a spirit like no other. Since he took his position, the Komische Oper has been a place that exudes art, passion, and the pleasure of creating musical theater together. Arnold Schönberg's opera Moses und Aron is one of the major works of the 20th century by a composer who transformed the history of music. Schönberg began writing the libretto in 1928. Initially, he imagined it as a cantata, and then as an oratorio, and finally as an opera. When he died in Los Angeles in July 1951, he left a work in progress. Only the first 2 of the 3 acts were completed. For almost 20 years, he searched for a solution for the third part of Moses und Aron, without success. At the end of his life, he finally agreed that his opera should be created in a 2-act version, but never had the opportunity to hear it before he died. In this interview carried out during the dramatic period of confinement in spring 2020, Barrie Kosky rightly insists on the splendid musical work of Vladimir Yurovsky at the head of the orchestra of the Komische Oper, on the exceptional commitment of the chorus, which is surely one of the most splendid ensembles in Europe, and on the intense performances of the 2 lead singers, Robert Hayward as Moses and John Dashak as Aron. It's time now to listen to him. This is Barrie Kosky in Berlin, recorded on the 28th of May 2020.
I've known this opera since I was a teenager. I was very lucky to have amazing music teachers in Melbourne, Australia. And I was very lucky to have an amazing grandmother who took me to the opera from when I was 7. She hated Schoenberg. She couldn't bear a note of it. But I was told by a music teacher to listen to it because this music teacher wanted to expand my education of music theatre, which had started with my grandmother, but it really basically started with Mozart and concentrated on the sort of 19th century repertoire. And it sort of finished with Wagner. So he said, okay, now welcome to the 20th century. So it was part of a plan where he actually gave me recordings of Moses and Aron and Wozzeck and Lulu and Die Soldaten. And I got to actually know this whole body of German and Austrian music theatre from the 20th century. And I was absolutely hooked on Moses and Aron. Because, of course, if you're a 16-year-old schoolboy and you're hearing it for the first time, it's like nothing you've heard before. It has no references to anything that you've heard from the 18th or 19th century.
Abrahams, Isaaks und Jakobs, dir du ihren Gedanken in mir wieder erweckt hast. Mein Gott, nötige mich nicht, ihn zu verkünden.
When I became a director, it was one of those projects that one day I'm going to have to put this unperformable opera, this scenic oratorio somehow on the stage. I started to see productions of it in Europe and was always very disappointed because it was clear that the music is so difficult for the chorus that the chorus just didn't move. or in some cases were removed entirely from the production. And the themes and the subject matter of the piece is quite complicated to provide a scenic and visual world for. It's difficult, but it's a fantastic difficult challenge.
Meine Zunge ist ungelenk. Ich kann denken, aber nicht reden.
The piece was, written in Berlin. So if you're living in Berlin and you're a Jewish director in Berlin and you start investigating all the music of the Weimar Republic in operetta, in music theatre pieces, and you're looking at Kurt Weill, and you're looking at the entire musical landscape of Berlin in the 20s and 30s, you can't ignore the piece. So I thought, well, I'm running an opera company. I can have 3-month rehearsals. I've got an amazing chorus. I asked Vladimir Yarovsky to come back to the house because he started his career in the late 90s as a Kapellmeister there. So he felt very much part of the family of the Komische Oper, and everything sort of fell into place from there. We said, well, let's do it, come on. At the beginning of any process, every director has his or her personal idiosyncratic way of entering into the world of each piece. No production, and for me, it's never the same process. If I know the opera very well, then it's a very different process than if I don't know the opera very well. And sometimes it's a very personal idea. Sometimes I think, what do I really want to concentrate on? With Moses and Aron, you have to sort of multitask because you have to somehow be very aware that the piece, in its investigation of what the folk, what the people of Israel want and need and desire and dream, is really the central drama of the piece, despite the fact that there is an amazing drama between the two brothers. And then there's a personal drama with Moses and his relationship with God and his inability, brilliantly done by Schoenberg, that Moses is the anti-hero. He's inarticulate. He stutters. He can't express himself. He sings the least music in the opera. Aron sings much more. You can sing Moses' music in 15 or 20 minutes, right through. So it's fascinating to begin with all the issues and questions. You have to begin somewhere. And for me, it was very important that there's something about one man and this group of people, and the need, and what does that little man need from these people, and what do the people need from this little man, and what can't he give them, and what is the overwhelming desire and frustration of both parties to each other. And I think that's the fundamental drama. The Moses and Aron relationship, of course, is very important in the piece, but that's not the starting point. I think the starting point is this expectation from the folk that one person can save them. Ridiculous. But we've had that for thousands of years on this planet. We still have it. This idea that one person, and this idea from this one man that there's this presence called God, which he can't articulate and he can't show them, and they have to trust him. And this is an amazing, timeless, powerful drama. And this was my starting point, how to bring that onto the stage. I mean, it's one of the most moving and extraordinary sort of chapters in music theatre, that this opera, which really in a way was the end of something anyway, you can say that everything started with Monteverdi's Orfeo and sort of ended in 1932 with Moses and Aron in Berlin, where he couldn't complete the third act. He'd written the text for the third act. He had to leave Berlin before he could finish the third act. So in a way, he staged, his idea of the piece became a horrible reality. He went into literally the deserts of California. I mean, it's dripping with extraordinary irony that Schönberg ended up in Hollywood, the land of the golden calf, which is built on a desert, unable to find people to perform his music and to persuade people of his musical style. I mean, he turned into Moses. And the theory with people is that, there's a theory Schoenberg never got round to it, he wanted to finish it. He couldn't finish it. The piece is impossible to finish because the theme is impossible to answer. I mean, it's brilliant. So I'm very against anything to do with staging the third act, writing new music for the third act. I think the piece is perfect as it is. All Wort, das mir fehlt. I mean, the best ending of any opera ever.
Allmächtige, meine Kraft ist zu Ende. Mein Gedanke ist machtlos in Arons Wort.
I find Schoenberg's music always very emotional. I don't find it dry. I don't find it academic. I don't find it intellectual. I think that there's a great deal of thought, and the structure of his atonality and the system that he invented is amazing. But to me, the music is incredibly visceral and sensual and strange. And I think that there's a great deal of emotionality, and I think this emotionality is due to his Judaism, and I think a lot to do with his ideas and his identification. I mean, what's very interesting is that his rediscovery of his Judaism came from one very famous incident when he was on holiday in Austria at a resort in the Wattersee and was told to leave. And I've got the quote. He wrote to Kandinsky, and he said, "I have last learnt the lesson that has been forced upon me this year, and I shall never forget it. I am not a German, not a European, indeed perhaps scarcely even a human being. I am a Jew." And for him, this was such a seismic shock that we saw then the reverberations of this shock, the discovery that he couldn't be ever seen as anything but a Jew to the Austrians, and we saw the reverberations, and this was the trigger for his work on Moses and Aron. Then he wrote a text which was originally an oratorio. Then the oratorio developed into a music theatre work, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Oh
we did something very symbolic. Normally, the chorus receive, photocopied parts, their own parts in a normal folder chorus. They rarely get the piano, the Klavierauszug or the score. And so we did something very important. We ordered, 120 full piano scores. So they all got their own big score at the beginning of the rehearsal. That was the first thing. The second thing is that before the first scenic rehearsal, they started rehearsing a year and a half before the first scenic rehearsal. And they had, before the first scenic rehearsal, over 100 music rehearsals, over 100 3-hour music rehearsals. Because I said I wanted them to know the parts by heart, and I wanted them to know them well enough that they could continue the great Komische Oper tradition started by Walter Felsenstein of chorus being the heart and soul of the production. And I said, you have to know this backwards. So at the beginning, they hated it. They absolutely hated it. It's torture to learn that music for a chorus. It's torture. The learning process. And of course, then it was wonderful to see this transformation from, we'll never do it, this is torture, it's too difficult, into, oh yes, I think we can do this, into, oh, I love this, into, oh, this is fantastic, into, well, of course, when we finish, can we do this again? When are we doing a revival? So this wonderful journey was fantastic. I mean, I've got to say, I've seen about 10 productions of Moses and Aron, and I have never seen, ever, a chorus do what the Komische Oper chorus do in this production, scenically as well as musically. It's really a quite remarkable thing. I was very helped, Christian, in the process that I had Vladimir Jurovsky with me to work with the chorus. Vladimir is sensational with the chorus, and so that the chorus felt incredibly trusted from the theatrical and the musical side. And you see that because if the chorus are not the central theatrical force of the production, so often you see wonderful images. The Castellucci Moses and Aron is wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful interpretation. I loved seeing it. I thought it was very, very powerful. But the chorus are there as a sort of oral world, really. And Castellucci creates those amazing images that he did in Paris. But for me, I needed the chorus to be men and women in Berlin, frustrated, and the whole emotional landscape from frustration to ecstasy. I needed to see in their bodies. To me, that was the one of the concepts behind the production. So you've got two singers, I'm sure known to many viewers of Opera Europa, two amazing singing actors. I mean, people like Robert and John are the reason why I love directing, because you have people who musically, theatrically, physically, intellectually, emotionally invest every fiber of their body and every fiber of their soul to present something on stage. And it's a great joy. And for me, it was very important that you have to have two contrasting figures, but you have to have a relationship between the figures. And it was very important for me that was there. The two of them, I'd worked with Bob before, he was my Bluebeard in my production of Bartok's Bluebeard in Frankfurt, the original Bluebeard. And John I'd always wanted to work with, so and I've subsequently now worked with John I think 3 times since then, and so they're both wonderful people and bring their own baggage and their own personalities to the piece. And John had sung it years ago in Stockholm, I think, and Robert was singing it for the first time, and it's quite tricky because Schoenberg gives Aron quite stratospherically difficult lyric tenor music. It was like his revenge. It was like his almost a parody of everything he hated about Italian opera. I'm going to give the tenor, a lyrical part so Aron can seduce like that Italian opera does. You can feel the Schoenberg subconscious working here, but I'm going to make it virtually impossible to sing. And with the lead role, you're not going to get much to sing. You're going to sing most of it in Sprechstimme. Occasionally you'll get a note, and I'm not going to give you much anyway. So it starts off being very unusual. The title role doesn't really sing. And when he does sing, he's singing in Sprechstimme. And the second major role is really worrying most of the time about, am I going to get these bloody notes out of my throat because they're so difficult to sing? So he sets that up quite interestingly. But I think then with the two of them, for me, it became a wonderful thing. And for me, the starting point, I said to my team, they're like some shabby little vaudeville act. I wanted to somehow, because I've seen so many productions where it's unclear who these people are. And for me, I thought they're Beckett clowns. They're vaudeville characters. And that's why we projected the citat from Waiting for Godot on the screen. There's something there. And I thought they're like two Yiddish vaudeville clowns sort of lost somewhere between Warsaw and the Lower East Side in New York. And they're lost in this dream world. And then it became for me very clear that Moses's staff could become like a magician's a stick, which they say actually is where the magician's stick came from. The famous magician's 19th century stick can be traced all the way back to the iconography of Moses' rod. And Aron was also a sort of magician, doing very bad magic tricks on stage. And for me, the idea of magic is very important in the piece, or failed magic, and very important in the history of sort of Jewish theatre. So there were a number of levels working with that. And so the two men become like a combination of Vladimir and Estragon from Waiting for Godot, and two sort of Jewish really bad Jewish magicians that are really, really bad, shabby bar mitzvah. Schoenberg and I have worked a lot with each other, and we work very much in sort of room constellations. What can we do with the space that makes it strange or difficult or complicated for the performers? And it was very clear to me. It's so complex, this piece. You're trying to put images on stage for an opera that is about the impossibility of images. Images are banned in in Judaism. So, and the entire opera is about that idea of the image. And we as an audience are watching something which is an image, but the piece inherently is not about, is bans that. So where do you start? And it was very important for me that everything came out of the body. So I said, look, I don't want the set to be a metaphor for anything. I don't want the set to represent anything. That has to come from the bodies of Moses and Aaron and the bodies and voices of the chorus. And I said it has to be a sort of dream room where out of the collective unconscious comes everything. It just literally vomits out of their mouths and they transform through their bodies. So I said, I just want a single set. I don't want it to change. And I said, I want something claustrophobic. I feel that we must, so that these people have to be packed in. So Klaus designed this sort of wonderful sort of, and on the television, of course, you don't get the full impact that you had in the theatre, where there's this sort of roof pressing down on the people, but there's a staircase coming down. So it looks a public space, but it's sort of inside. So you think, is it a train station corridor? Are they going down to the metro? Are they, where is this space? And why do they keep coming back and forward into this space? So I wanted all those ambiguous associations. And then Klaus had the wonderful idea, because we read that Freud loved Persian carpets in his apartment in Vienna. So Klaus then had the idea to sort of use these Persian carpets sort of going down where the characters can get then wrapped in these carpets, and we use that. And then that was very simple. So it's a very suggestive space, but it's a very unusual, and it's a very, in a way I would say, unsympathetic space. It's not a space it's not a space of, oh, isn't that beautiful? That's not what the piece needs. It's also a space that, it's a public space that's internalized. And I thought that was very, very important. And I think Klaus did a wonderful job with that, because it is a tricky opera to find the right images for. You know, it really is tricky. It can easily turn into kitsch or really, really slap in your face sort of dramaturgical ideas. And I have an aversion to both those things.
Das mir fehlt.
One of the wonderful things about live performance, and one of the things about opera and really interesting and wonderful opera productions or experiences that you have, is it's ephemeral. It's not film. It's not television. It's not caught forever. It exists at a time and a place and then is remembered either through a recording or through the people that were there. But I'm not that sentimental. Would I have liked to done again? Maybe. I mean, my dream idea was that when I was rehearsing Meistersingers, I thought in Bayreuth, what I would love to do in Bayreuth is to do a trilogy. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to do Friday night Meistersingers on Shabbat, Saturday night after Shabbat, Moses and Aron, and on Sunday night, Fiddler on the Roof. And I thought that would have been my ideal Kosky trilogy at Bayreuth. Maybe in the future, who knows, But I think it's very interesting because there's I was working on Moses and Aron at the same time I was working on Meistersingers. And Meistersingers is a way the anti-Moses and Aron, and Moses and Aron in a way is the anti-Meistersingers. And in a way, Tevye is a Shtetl Moses. So it's quite interesting. But as I said, I'm very happy that at least we recorded it so that people now, can see it.